Fellas, I'm a little fired up about this Colts situation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think I'm fired up about it, Pat McAfee held nothing back about what he thought about the Indianapolis Colts yesterday. Did you guys see his tweet that he put out yesterday? The paragraph, the blog. Kev, did you see that?
Oh, yeah. It was a long one.
Shirts and pants, man. And at this moment that we're recording this, it has 12.7 million views on X.
Oh, I'm pulling it up.
You're pulling up the tweet?
Yeah.
And it is a marathon of a tweet. But really, I can't believe what happened yesterday in some cases. And I know a lot of people, I asked this question on social media, was that the worst loss of the year? You're playing for your playoff lives. But people are saying, well, the Ravens lost to the Raiders. Yeah, in week 2. And you lost at home. Great. The Giants hadn't scored more than 30 points all season. The Giants had the number 1 overall pick going into the game. The Giants hadn't won a game at home all season. And Drew Lock, who has been now with 3 teams, Denver, Seattle, Giants. Yeah. He got benched then after he was starting Tommy DeVito. Then it was Drew and Tommy. And then Drew Lock goes out and proves that he might be the franchise quarterback who needs the top overall pick. 5 touchdowns for Drew Lock in a game that they had to have. But Pat McAfee, if you guys are listening on the audio side, which is on Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts, Pat McAfee said, I've said what I believe to be the truth about the team, and a bunch of Colts fans on the internet were trying to get me booed out of the city. Current players who have won nothing during their entire tenures started using me in my face to try and paint me as the enemy in the city I've committed my life to. And in the end, everything went just like I fucking said it would. In the biggest moments, everybody with a brain knew they'd crack, and they did. We could go on and on about this, but you're seeing here all of the things that he's talking about. And actually, Brad, I think I put in the video. McAfee reacted to it today, this whole response. And before we play the video, the last comment of this all the way at the bottom is, I've never seen a group waste opportunities / talent / money more than this group. So obviously Pat talked about it today on his show. Let's play that for you guys real quickly.
Into it. Salute the Service Award, which is obviously a massive ordeal, especially here in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is an award given to somebody on each team for their service back to the military and how they. I was very lucky to win that award multiple times. I became a finalist in the NFL, felt honored to do it. Here in Indiana, the amount of military personnel there is.
Not a lot.
The amount of military everywhere. Camp Atterbury is about an hour south of here. They're sending people to war down there. I mean, this is a very, very, very big military hub. You heard about the shelter downtown before the winter. The Colts gave that to Blue, the Salute to Service Award winner. It's like the Colts gave the award to themselves for what they do for the military in Indianapolis. It's like, so nobody on the team.
Who's Blue?
Blue's the mascot.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the Colts. Like, that is the Colts.
Yeah, they tell him where to go.
So it's like you just start adding up all these things. It's like, who are you guys? Like, why do you think you are who you are? And it's because they all got paid. They've all been here. And there's never been anybody that's like, hey, you can't just stink and get away with it. Well, you can, because they have.
Shit, I agree with damn near everything you said in that tweet.
A lot of bum tendencies.
Yeah.
Just like too many bum tendencies. And then they're, just stop being bums. Just be like, it's hard for me to understand and wrap my mind around it. Especially, like Anthony Richardson didn't play yesterday, and I hope his back is healthy. Legitimately, I hope his back is healthy. Back spasms would suck. The fact that it wasn't rolled out as back spasms to begin with, I think is...
That's in my opinion, once again, and I know a lot of people over there, I got a lot of respect, but that's an organizational thing, because you can't, you put him in a bad spot, because we don't know as fans, we don't know what's going on inside the building, but when you say back and foot soreness for a week when everything's on the line, and there's already been question marks around your quarterback with the tapping out and missing games like that, and you say back and foot soreness, and then after the game you say, oh, it was spasm and they were serious, and that's what are we doing?
McAfee used bum behavior.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's been friends with the organization for years. He has said many a times he has no connection with the current staff and players, and a lot of them don't like him because of what he said. And that goes back to all of this. But fellas, I mean, let's look at this from a context.
Yeah.
And imagine this is your team you're rooting for. Imagine this is Baltimore and season on the line. And again, I agree with him. I hope Anthony Richardson's okay. But a lot of vague messaging before then. People were questioning then Anthony Richardson, saying, is he not willing to play through it? Then the next thing is you go and play a team that has the worst record in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You have to win to stay alive. And quite frankly, they had the easiest path of the teams that needed the most help, right? The Colts, if they win out, they just need the Broncos to lose to the Chiefs, and they were the team that was going to be in. A couple weeks before, they should have beat the Broncos. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Taylor's fumble at the goal line.
Yep. Yeah.
Dropping the ball. Talk about momentum plays.
Oh, yeah.
Changed the entire game.
I'll say this. You might not criticize the players, but one of the guys within the locker room did, and he called them out. He said, DeForest Buckner said today, I'm going to be honest, we shit the bed another year. It's frustrating this offseason. There's going to be some changes, and sometimes those changes are going to be uncomfortable for people. There will be uncomfortable conversations, and I think obviously that's probably amongst themselves. I mean, you've been a part of some pretty terrible teams, right? And so, like, is there some truth to that where, like, you got a guy like DeForest coming out and maybe some former players saying, hey, like, it's about accountability and you got to take accountability for yourself and then keep others accountable too. Can you speak to that? Like, as far as what that looks like in a locker room?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we even go back first off to another Colts player. Kenny Moore was saying things earlier this year. If we remember, we played a clip on here of saying, and there are all the reports coming out there. Yeah, you know, on any team that you play on as you continue to move up, and this doesn't have to even be at the highest level. I mean, any level of sport that you've played that you care about and you're competitive about, you can tell who's fully bought in for those. I'm not going to say everyone has reasons, but if you're on a team like that, your goal is to win. So the right reasons. I'm going to say that, the right reasons. And you can tell when someone else's focus is elsewhere or they aren't taking it as seriously enough. And when you get into the professional world, this is what you got to battle. You got to battle. One, yes, you're trying to make a career and your livelihood, right? That is the reality. It's a business. You don't play well, they're going to cut you. But the job is to win. Make yourself valuable, so your focus needs to be on winning. If you're not focused enough on the day-to-day, and then you get paid, and that's when we've seen with players take the foot off the gas if they have been paid. It's got to show. And for the Colts right here, Buckner's exactly right. You need to have guys that are willing to change a culture, because if not, the same thing's going to happen over and over again. And that's what Pat's alluding to. That's what DeForest is alluding to. And I'm glad he called him out. I'm glad that they said that, because to me, not only was it the most embarrassing loss for in the NFL, but for the Colts, not only was it a bad loss, you lost by double digits.
To the worst team in football.
To the worst team in football. A quarterback that's been a cast-off, Kevin. Drew Lock.
Yeah.
How many screens? The Malik Neighbors' first touchdown, 31 yards. They had a punt return. Turnover on the first possession. 45 points. And I know fantasy football-wise, take that aside. That was brutal. Go ahead.
It was one of those games where you genuinely watched, and I hate to say this, but it literally felt like what I would watch if an NFL team offense was playing against a college defense, because it wasn't anything creative. Right. It wasn't like, oh, these are just, if Malik Neighbors beat you, he's an out-of-this-world talent. I think he's going to be a star in this league. He beat you once or twice. But it was just screen passes. It was 3rd and 8s. It was dump offs.
And Drew Lock rushing for a touchdown.
Yes, Drew Lock rushing for a touchdown.
After almost falling down before that, too.
Yes, right. It was just time after time. Every play, you were like, okay, the Giants weren't going out there trying to win. They were throwing slants that then the Colts were missing 7 tackles on.
Right.
We had Giants players, like you said, even besides the Drew Lock one on the one screen, the Giant players started tripping at like the 15-yard line and had enough time to catch balance, and then still beat everyone to the end zone. It just was a hard game to watch. And I couldn't imagine being a Colts fan sitting here, because there needs to be something. And it starts with, they got a clear house, GM, coach, everything. I know it's Steichen's second year, all that. It feels like an organizational thing.
Well, Jim Irsay's got to look himself in the mirror too. I mean, I know, but and it's the same thing with like Jerry Jones, right? Like everybody's critical of him, and he can't get out of his own way. And I feel like Jim Irsay is the same way. It's just like, you're the one that sets the culture in that organization. Jerry Jones is the one that does the same. And I feel like those two owners are very similar in that way. Jim Irsay obviously isn't as front facing, doesn't want to be on camera all the time. but he's also just as full of himself and just thinks that he has all the answers, and he very clearly does not.
Yeah.
And he just needs to put people in the right place to actually be able to make those decisions.
You know, your football team is in a horrible spot when I see Colts fans just tweeting out, I hope they move on from Anthony Richardson solely for Anthony Richardson's sake.
Well,
like they were like,
yeah.
stop ruining his. He's like, this guy, like, get him out of the Colts because he's an all-world talent, and we're just going to ruin his career.
And he's the worst quarterback to be in an organization that's dysfunctional because he was so raw coming in that he needed the support from a legitimate organization to elevate his game. Almost kind of like a Lamar Jackson. I feel like if Lamar Jackson was in an organization like the Colts, he wouldn't have made it.
Stability matters. Stability matters in an organization. You can look around the NFL right now. Who is having an
100%.
Unbelievable season for the Minnesota Vikings?
The Vikings, right. Yeah.
The Jets almost ruined Sam Darnold. And I'm not saying Sam Darnold is a top 10 quarterback, but it went from the Jets was a bad, dysfunctional situation where he showed flashes of moments, but then they were done with him. Baker, they were all about him being the savior, and all of a sudden it was Baker's fault.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with those two organizations right now? The Jets haven't been to the postseason in 14 years since Rex Ryan was there.
Got it, yeah.
And the Browns, we know their track record. Their only playoff win in recent memory was Baker Mayfield leading the team at Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
There's so many different parts that are going on there. But go ahead.
I was going to say, and then all of a sudden, 2018 becomes one of the greatest draft years for quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
And then
it's kind of crazy.
If you're the Colts, you lose to a guy that is more known for what he did on the sideline of an NFL game and rapping Jeezy than what he's actually done on the field. And I agree with you, Brad, where it's like the Colts couldn't pick a side this season with Anthony Richardson, where it was like, all right, he's not really performing well. There was the whole thing with him getting tired and subbing himself out of the game and this, that, and the other. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to bench him for Joe Flacco, and this is a long-term thing. Like, this is not – they made it clear. This is going to be a long-term thing.
Long-term turned into 3 weeks.
Yeah. And the other part, too, with Anthony Richardson, and this is where, again, the dysfunction of a team protecting you. Yeah, when you say back soreness and whatnot.
Yeah, the PR team shit the bed on that, too.
I know a lot of people are going to say, well, maybe it comes out later. He has a fracture. Something happens when you were trying to be careful. But what it sounds like, given what happened earlier where he took himself out of the game for being tired, it just sounds like he didn't want to play. And I don't think that's fair to Anthony at the same time.
Gotta read the room.
Yeah, and the point is they did not protect him on that sense. And then also when the reports were coming out, the players were late to meetings or whatever it was, like the work ethic, no one even debunked that with the Colts. It was just, they just like, oh, we know we're focused on winning, which I get it. But the fact that everything's going on and no one's really debunking that, and then the play on the field, that's the ultimate indicator. If they win and they were in the playoffs and they won the division, it's all hearsay. We're all just talking about it. But the fact that they're not winning, that's what's happening here. And again, I tell people with fan bases, and for Ravens fans, we had a lot of Baltimore fans, be thankful you have an organization that's structured. It makes the world of difference. You want to take some more examples? Go look at the Commanders and the Bears right now. New ownership with the Commanders, new coach, new system. Jane Daniels, exceptional talent. Unbelievable last night, right? By the way, like just incredible. Thriving. Yeah. Chicago, no leadership. Dysfunctional. And yes, Caleb was talked up to be something that he may or may not be, but we're not going to fully know that until something is cleaned house in there, because there is no accountability there. There is no structure in Chicago.
And there's a ton of talent. I mean, there's a ton of talent in the Chicago squad on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
And it just goes to show that
organizational dysfunction
will ruin a team no matter how talented they are.
And the Colts, the reality is the Colts could have won the division back-to-back years. This Texans team was not as good as they could have been.
No, they shouldn't be leading the division. They really shouldn't be. Not the
way
way that
AFC
they've been
South has been just disappointing. I don't want to call them I'll call them AFC South dynasties, because I feel like you had Trevor Lawrence go there and you're like, oh, okay. The AFC South runs through Jacksonville the next, decade. Like they got the guy. Didn't do it. Then it was like, oh, well, he was taking over for Derrick Henry and them. And then you're like, okay, well, now CJ Stroud, he's going to run this thing for the next decade. And then disappointment again. It feels like that division is just one team takes a big step one year and you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That's the team to beat in this division. Then everyone else is like, no, we're just actually really mediocre.
Quite literally half of the AFC is trash.
Yeah.
This season.
It's
the AFC East and the AFC South all trash teams except for the Bills.
Wolf. And the last thing to close out that conversation, going into this game yesterday, the Giants had 3 interceptions on the year.
Uh-huh.
And they had 2 yesterday. And going into the game, they had 12 total takeaways, which would have tied them at the bottom, right? The only one that has less turnovers is the Jaguars with 9, but they would have been tied with the Patriots and the Browns. Also, another team that's low on that list, the New York Jets. Talented team, only 13 takeaways. Granted, they had a lot of injuries, but also maybe firing their defensive-minded head coach was not the right decision.